Hi guys, it's Ryan from leprivatebanker.com. Just doing my nightly recap for crude oil and gold. I'll start off with gold here today, as this is the market I was focused on today. And so what we saw here was a bullish open off of Globex, and I mean, we did finish last week in a bullish sort of Vwap structure, and basically just came down and tested this previous value area high now from last week. But obviously overnight we see this sort of initial move up, maybe off some possible sort of news that's going on in a minute. Has some news driven markets with crude oil, and this could be also affecting gold. And so we opened a gap up on the RTH profile. I mean, I was going to show you the RTH pit session chart. So these are the TPOs for the pit. These are Globex, and as you can see overnight on Globex we sort of auctioned higher, and then into the pit open we see a responsive selling off of the development value area high on the Globex, as you can see here. This is development value, and we see an imbalance to the buy side, and the market came back into balance, and we see two-way trade. And then the short location was off the development value area high and targeting yesterday's mean. As again, this is like a long liquidation profile. We opened gap up on RTH. We opened gap up away from the current trade. I mean, this is a Globex chart. On my actual work, my trading station, I had a RTH candlestick, and like I said, we opened gap up into the 50 EMA, and we found responsive sellers from here. I mean, when I say responsive sellers, I mean that sellers are in the market. It just means that there's maybe some long liquidation. The shorts, the longs that are building the bias to the long side, I mean, they're covering possibly some risk here, and this is why we see this B-shaped short long liquidation profile in the market. So I mean, what we've seen here is we've seen just this drive up, and then we see balance on Friday, and then we open gap up, and we've just seen a reversion back to this previous trading range. So obviously at the market at the minute, the main focus is obviously price is too high, price is too low, and acceptance between the buyers and the sellers at the minute. So depending on how we start opening above or below this point of control, we can start building up or lower distribution. It's depending on how we continue to trade here. But this is the first sign of obviously responsive sellers in the market, considering we've been one time framing up. And on the RTH profiles, we actually are still one time framing up at the minute. And if we look here, we've basically been one time framing since the low for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is the 10th day of one time framing higher in the pit session. So will this be broken tomorrow, and will we see a reversal, or will we see this continue to one time frame higher into this gap fill that we've seen on the RTH trade? I mean, this is quite an important area at the minute. We've opened up in this excess gap fill, and we couldn't test the 1285s, and we just found responsive sellers off the open, like I said, with this long liquidation market profile structure in place. And again, this is just basically down to that value area from last week, and it also lines up with with this month's value area. So I mean, on my intraday spreadsheets that I provided yesterday for the preparation going into the intraday trade, I had actually said that we'd opened obviously away from the 5 exponential moving average, we'd opened away from the higher time frame value, and there was some movement, there was some room to move to the downside here, because we were very overbought regards to the perception of value across the higher time frames. And now we've come back to fair price, so we're starting to see, maybe we see two-way trade coming in now up here. So let me just update this quickly. So we've got so I'm just going to just delete this, and I'll draw the new bracket in place. So this is obviously the new sort of bracketing area that we're looking for. So I mean, is the market going to start to see two-way trade in this area, and we're going to see just rotations from high to low until we see the next directional move, or are we just going to just find offer and see a retracement back to this previous sort of area that we were trading in between 1264s and 1240s? So this is obviously yet to be seen, but there are some bullish, some bearish triggers that have occurred here. I mean, we couldn't trade back into this previous sort of bracket high that we were trading in, so this is going to be overhead support until we sort of break this high now. So some real important information coming into the market today from gold, but obviously we have to remain bullish until the one time frame is taken out, and until pretty much we come back into value on this month. And we're still looking in balance to the buy side, and we was starting to hold last month's value. So I mean, maybe we still find offer here and we see reversion back to the 88s for last month. Just one more thing to sort of note here is we are testing obviously the quarterly developing value area low, so we've seen responsive buyers back into this quarter's value, and sort of two-way trade has come back into the market on this perception, but we have come back to zero on delta for this quarter, so I'm still looking bearish in this market, and but it just depends here if we continue to hold this developing value area low on this quarter's value, and we see reversion to the actual mean at 1287, so it's back into that area again that I was talking about. So we could, like I said, we could see this just balancing this upper area now that two-way trade balance has come back into this market with reversions to the mean. And we've not got that much left of this quarter, and you can see that we've seen this value area created inside last quarter's value area. You can see that the major distribution on the volume has been in this in these upper prices between 80 and 1310. So all we've seen here is just a reversion back to where we was trading almost previously. Obviously not in that tight narrow range that we was in for a little while, but I mean, we have come back and tested this upper areas now. So you know, sellers strong enough here to continue to push this down and see balance in this lower area before breaking down, or are we going to see two-way trade with a reversion back to the mean and just clear sort of reversion on the higher time frame, showing that there is a clear two-way trade balance in this market still. If we look at the composite for this sort of year, and this composite that I've been tracking, you can see that we just opened today into the higher area of this. I mean, this is the distribution that we were sitting in for a long time, that I just highlighted in this quarter, and we just basically auctioned from that weird anomaly down here through this low excess area, testing the edge of this distribution, where we found obviously the short cover, the long liquidation, or the shorts coming in to the market, which we just rotated back down to this anomaly again, down to the point of control. So just looks like we've just filled in some key volume today in this area here now. So interesting to see this happen. I mean, like I said, we could see reversions back to 90, which is this very, very high volume low, but if we do start to find offer here, then we are most likely going to come down and start trading back inside of this lower distribution, filling in some volume into this low volume area here, and just we'll see where we go from there. If we do look at the weekly, I mean, I know I've done this a bit backwards today. I normally start the highest time frames and go forward, but I mean, we have seen responsive sellers above last week's high, so we sort of cleaned out in the inventory above last week's high, and we've seen responsive sellers, and we are into this sort of cluster of moving averages on the weekly, and there is this trend line that clearly here where we've seen sellers come in. So who knows, maybe we see a rotation back down to last week's low, into the lower 50s, which will confirm that the bracketing we could start to see bracketing in this lower area. That is yet to be seen yet. It's a new week, so we'll just see how we play out the rest of the week here. And obviously to do this, and we have to see last week's value accepted, which then we will see a reversion back into this month's mean. So it just all depends on how we play out here. There's a lot of scenarios that could play out. Just depends on how we continue to see the market act here overnight and going into the RTH pit session trade. So just quickly, so the trade location for today was off the value area high, and I just targeted the mean price from Friday. I mean, we had a clear sort of very, very tight, narrow balanced value area formed, and these areas are normally pretty strong. And you can see how it was responsive. We see buyers coming in off the high, and then we see buyers again off the value area low, and we just couldn't come back into value. And finally, we just see that last sort of spike down into the close as they cleared out the rest of the inventory short on the books for today. So that was pretty much it for gold, and I'm just going to run over crude quickly here. I mean, just see a very balanced sort of day on crude oil. Starting to sort of track these upper distributions. I mean, you could argue that we're just going to track this top one because we had this sort of gap up, but I'm sort of looking at the 3-day balance at the minute as we start into one time frame higher to see how the accumulation is coming into the market, and you can see that there is fair prices into the 107. So if we do continue to trade into these 107s, then I'm expecting to build a higher distribution and continue to trade higher in this market. It just depends on how we continue to open and trade it. As you can see, we have been one time framing on the RTH for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th day of one time framing, similar to gold, and the moving averages are currently playing catch up with price here, along with most of the moving averages. I mean, you can see on the monthly that we was sort of referencing these the 1.5 standard deviation, but we just couldn't find offer there today, and we've broke back in. So it looks like there's a possible test of 106 even, and then we see if there's still responsive buyers, and we're going to continue to see an imbalance in crude oil here or not. You can same across the whole picture here. I mean, this year you can see that the value is getting pulled off. We are starting to establish higher value than last year now. So, I mean, next obviously area to test is the 1082s. That is clearly on the cards, and obviously you can see the 109.33s is the next sort of major support level. We're just finding some sellers at the moment above that previous year's value area high, so this is quite important as we had an inside year from yesterday, so that we are still finding sellers at that last year's value area high. So interesting again to see how we continue to sort of play out here in crude oil. But, very news driven at the minute with all the news coming out, and we are approaching some major sort of levels here. I mean, if we look at the weekly wedge that's been in play here, we found responsive sellers, and the market's just been coiling, getting tighter and tighter and tighter, narrower ranges. So we are at this major sort of bracket high at the minute. I mean, are we going to see a breakout, or are we going to see just the market fall back in and continue to see a wedge? I mean, if we do see a breakout here, we could see a pretty exponential move up to at least the 1221s, where we could continue to see a larger time frame bracket come into play. But if we see this market become so imbalanced, we break this levels, then who knows where we're going to come here, because there's a lot of upside potential in this market that we've not currently obviously tried to explore. So it'd be real interesting what happens with this market. So as you can see, we've just seen it compress and compress and getting tighter and tighter and tighter ranges. So once this thing does finally does pop, it's going to be pretty explosive, it looks like, on these higher time frames. So just have to see how this plays out. But at the minute, obviously, we stay bullish on crude above the 106s and 106.50s. There are some confidence to work with. So we'll see if we continue to see balance in here in one time frame and as a value catches up with price, or whether we see a correction here before maybe continuing up higher. Anyway, I'll leave it at that for the minute. I'll just quickly touch base on crude oil. So I didn't actually trade this market today, but I was watching it, and the first trade location I was looking for, which I missed, was off of the developing value area low. So obviously, what I would have got I would have tried to get long off the developing value area low, and as you can see, we just couldn't find offer here above the developing value area high. Above the value area high, and into the Globex mean. So I would have probably got one or two scales into this rotation, depending on where I got in. I mean, I normally look for 15-30 tick scale outs on my positions, and obviously around confidence. So depending on how good I feel here, one of them probably would have been into the initial balance high, and the other one would have been into the developing value area higher. And as you can see, we did see the second attempt to try push higher, but the market just couldn't trade above it, and it almost become a destination trade to the other side of value. And I mean, I was looking at this a little bit differently this morning, because I had an RTH developing RTH value area up. I look at both, but I was looking at the RTH value, and we were starting to reject the mean and the high above it. But as I said, in the Globex value, we just could not trade above it and find offer above the previous day's value, and we just see a clear destination trade all the way to the other side. And I did mention this could play out in the chat books after this potential long failed to do what I was expecting it to do. I mean, on the profile you can see that we had this sort of test down into the mean, into this sort of anomaly area, and then we see responsive buyers, and we started to one time frame higher, and we just couldn't close above the initial balance. And the one time frame got taken out in E period, and then that's when you could look for the short off of Vwap then. And that's pretty much how I see things play out today on crude oil. So anyway, like a very rotational day. I think it's only about a 52 tick and range in RTH. So we are starting to see these ranges start to compress in RTH. So maybe the offer at the minute is starting to weaken. Anyway, I'll catch you all tomorrow. Any questions, please ask as normal on the forum and in my journal. If not, email me. Take care and goodbye.